Hello, welcome. I would like to share today a somatization on postural tone and how it changes as we change our relationship to gravity spatially. It's based originally on what I learned from Dr. Carl Bobath and Berta Bobath in 1969 when I studied neurodevelopmental therapy with them in London. They developed an amazing work working with children in those days, but also adults with brain dysfunction. What I want to share today has to do with, as I said, postural tone and the tonic labyrinthian reflex. Now, I'm not sure, history is not my forte, but I think that Dr. Bobath had studied early work with reflexes from the work of Magnus and Sherrington, the early part of the 1900s, I imagine also going back into the late 1800s. And one of the reflexes, one of the early reflexes that was named, discovered, identified, was the tonic labyrinthian reflex. And it was noticed with, in particular, children with cerebral palsy or with brain dysfunction, that when they were on their back, I'm not going to be totally on my back, I'm on a ball, but in the position of lying with face up. And what happened with the children lying on their back was they would go into an extension pattern. The arms, not like that, but the arms flexed, but the legs and the spine extended and the head thrown back, usually to one side. That's the second issue. And then when they would lie on their bellies or face down, they would go into flexion. I hope that's not so true today, that we have found ways through the Bobaths and others to help prevent that extreme response. But meanwhile, as a dancer, I asked the question, well, why that response to gravity? So how does that affect us in our everyday life? And how does it affect, well, me at the time as a dancer? And over the decades, I've been studying this and researching it in myself and in others, both with people with neurological challenges, dancers, athletes, just how do you get up, stand, and sit down. I'm going to trace back a little bit that process. And then we'll do the somatization. If you look at muscles, for example, the flexors, they're named flexors because when you flex the arm, they're controlling it. But in this case, they're also controlling the extension. So a contraction we think of as something getting smaller, but in this situation, the flexor muscles are getting shorter to flex my arm, but they're getting longer to extend my arm. And the extensors are not the active element in this. In other words, if I do it's called a concentric contraction to come up, and I let that contraction go, my arm will fall. And careful if you do that with me, because you could hurt yourself. Most injuries are caused on a lengthening contraction not being strong enough. So I'm shortening the contraction, and they say, well, I need to use the extensors. If I do the extensors, I'll get a jerk out like that. Again, be careful that you don't hurt yourself. Maybe do it slowly. So a shortening contraction of the flexus, and a lengthening contraction of the flexors, extends. So why are these called the extensors when these are flexing and extending the forearm? The theory was based mechanically. It wasn't based on movement, but on an interpretation of movement. So if you take away gravity, most of us are in relation to gravity most of the time. In our movement, we're always in relationship. But if I move parallel to the earth, then gravity remains constant. In this case, the flexors shortening flex my arm, and the extensors shortening extend my arm. So if you look at the body mechanically, yes, that's true. But if you look at it in terms of gravity, which is how we move, it's not true. So for example, if I extend my shoulder, these are shortening my extensors of the shoulder. But as I lower my arm, it's an eccentric, that's the word for lengthening. Concentric shortening, eccentric lengthening. If I come up forward, the flexors, shoulder flexors, shorten to bring my hand up, but they lengthen to bring my hand down, and then at the halfway point, the extensors shorten, and then the extensors lengthen. If I bend my arm forward, then I bring my arm up through the shortening of the extensors. I bring my hand forward and down to gravity, to the gravity point. But then if I don't move my shoulder and leave it right where it is, I have actually flexed it 90 degrees. So it's all in relation to gravity, not in relation to a machine that if it goes this way, it goes like that, and that way it goes like that. So what did I just say? I was talking about muscle tone. I wasn't talking about muscle tone. I was talking about muscles contracting by shortening and contracting by lengthening. So it changes the word what actually a contraction is. But then tone of the muscle has to do with the resting state of a muscle before a contraction. So if I'm here, that's my muscle tone. If I'm here and I reduce the muscle tone, then I have a lower muscle tone. And if I tighten, then I have a higher muscle tone. So muscle tone is relative to the resting state. And another definition is that it's the readiness of a muscle to respond. So if I have this very low tone, I'm not so ready to respond. If I'm really tight in my muscle tone, then I'm ready to act right away. So if you have a tendency to be more sluggish, then you would have lower tone. If you have a tendency to be really always ready to act, then you'll have a higher muscle tone. What I was actually showing, though, was not just muscle tone of this muscle, but I was showing postural tone. So postural tone is a collective of all the muscles into our own readiness to move. So of an injury, maybe just this muscle's low tone. But if it's my whole body, then my whole body is low tone. Or if it's high tone here, I immediately high toned here. It's hard for me to get high tone just in one side, but I did it. Then it's just a local action, but that's usually due to an injury or some kind. But normally our muscle tone is through the whole body, and that becomes postural tone. So am I going to get to the somatization? Let's see. I've said postural tone is the tone of our collective muscle tone, and it's affected by all of our other muscles and cells it's not just muscles, but it shows out because it's our muscles that move us. So we're looking at muscles on the end of the spectrum. Muscle tone, postural tone, and then I mentioned the labyrinthian reflex, which increases the tone on the underside of the body. And depending if you're on your side, it'll increase it here, increase it here, increase it on the back and the front. So I'm going to call it front body, back body, side body, side body. And normally, or traditionally, or classically, it's considered that it's stimulated and affects the otoliths in the ear. And the otoliths are in the inner ear, and they're little stones, so that if you tilt your head this way, the little stones fall this way. If you fall this way, they fall that way. So wherever your head is falling, that changes the tone of the body to be on the underside in relation to gravity. In my own research about cells, I don't have to change it with my head. I can just change it from the cells themselves. So even before I released my head, I could release the my postural tone in relation to gravity. When I release my head, then I have more. So it's every cell's relationship to the earth, not just the otoliths. It's my experience that the nervous system is a recording system. It's recording the activity of the other cells of the body. It stores it everywhere in the nerves, but in particular in the brain, and then it can retrieve it. So we don't have to rediscover everything all the time. We have these patterns in the brain that are potential, and we have patterns in all the cells of the body that are potential, and they're inherited. Only as potential, though. They have to be brought into existence. So how do we, if we don't have something that would be helpful, then what is the stimulus that would bring that into the world? And if we have something that's actually repressing or diverting a helpful reflex, how do we create the stimulus to bring that into existence? Either through arising out of not experiencing it yet, or I have trouble with words sometimes, removing the things that are derailing it from emerging. So, am I ready for the somatization? I think so. I think so. Let's try it. All right. Lie down on the floor, or your bed, or you have a hammock. Lie down where you're comfortable. Be comfortable. Why not? It doesn't matter what position you take. If you're lying down, gravity is going to move through your body, either from the front to the back. If you're lying on your back, gravity will come this way. Or if you're lying on your belly, gravity will come from your back into your belly, into the earth. Oh, I did forget something. I usually do. Wait 1 second before you zone out to explore. I mentioned shortening and lengthening contraction. What I didn't mention is that when it comes to the postural tone, we don't just look at shortening and extending, because that's not really about what our movement is. Our movement is condensing and expanding. We're spiralic in nature, and there's a gliding of tissues. So instead of just saying shorten and lengthen, it's condensing and expanding, and that takes it through the whole body. So we're doing this, we switch arms. If I want to just think shortening and lengthening, but I think of it's condensing, it's expanding on the other side. And then this is expanding, this is condensing, now this is condensing and that's expanding. One more piece. There's a law in kinesiology that says, it's many years since I read it, so I might paraphrase it a little strangely, but it's called something like the law of the antagonist, that the antagonist relaxes when the agonist contracts. So it's looking at shortening contraction, that when this contracts, this they say relaxes, and that when this contracts, I have to be careful, I'll jerk myself, when this contracts, this relaxes. But that's nonsense. That's how a machine would work, but it's not how life works. That when this is shortening, this is extending, it's active. And when this, I'll do it this way, now I have to use it, you see, because I've changed my relationship to gravity. So while this shortens, this is lengthening. And the way that I discovered it was not making it a mental rule, but if I really relax here, and that's my gift, I can really relax, and I just do this, there's no modulation. So while this is condensing, this is expanding. And actually, if this expands as an active role while this is condensing, then we have movement. This is not movement. This is an idea about movement, but this is movement. This is movement. This is just some intellectual nervous system imposition about what movement is. That's my experience. So condensing and expanding. So how that then weaves in. I'm going over decades of research in just a few minutes, so bear with me as I spin around. That when we're in this relationship to gravity, that there's a condensing that draws us into the earth, but there's an equal expansion that expands us into the universe, into the heavens. And here, the condensing is on the back. Careful I don't fall off. Condensing on the back, but expanding on the front. I'm really open. I'm not just arching my back. I'm leaning, I'm resting on the earth. And then on the side, the underside condenses and the upper side expands. It's not just, I'm not just doing this. I'm doing this. I'm condensing here and expanding here. And then I condense here and expand here. It's about movement. Meanwhile, let's try again. Lie on the ground, on the earth, on the ground, or on your floor, or on your bed, or wherever it is that you want to lie down, on your couch, your rug, your your dance studio. Lie down and feel. How do I say feel? How do you actively feel something? It's not a motor act, so someone says, well, I don't feel anything. Well, that's because you're motorically trying to create an incoming information. So an image that some people have found helpful, it came as an experience, is that open the back of your brain. Your cerebellum is back there and your brainstem. And you come up and you open the back and you say, well, how do you open the back? Well, how do you open anything? How do you open your eyes? Well, you open it in the back and then let this rest. Because when we try to do something or we focus on doing something, we're using the frontal lobe. That's a motor act. So if you want to feel something, don't look for it. Open to it. Because if you're looking, it's a motor act. You see what I'm saying? Theoretically, you're not supposed to be looking at me. You're supposed to be feeling yourself. Sorry. So open the back of your brain. I guess I'm lying on my back. And open the back of your brain and feel, words, they're not the experience or the finger pointing. Can you feel, or open to the feeling, maybe that's the better way to say it, that this exists. It's not learned. You came into the world with it, but either you know it right away or it takes a while for it to seep through all the learning that's been placed on top of it. Like you're supposed to know the answer, so that's a motor act, instead of absorbing what already exists. So you're lying on your, I'm laying on my back, so you can be it any way you want, but it's easier for me if I have a reference word. Okay, the reference word will be underside. So you can be lying on your side, your belly, or your back. The underside, there's a condensing. There's a condensing on the underside. It's natural, but then once you feel it, you can increase it. Maybe I'll be quiet for a minute. And just don't do anything, and yet obviously we're doing something. It's such a strange way to speak. Easier to be together in a different way, but this is a new world. Release, that's another word. Release. But that's different than collapse. Collapse is to not feel it. That earth, in a way, it's just to give up, which we all do it sometimes, where you just kind of go, ugh, you just give up your tone, you reduce your tone, you go underneath what would be a tone for responding. What do I mean by that? Postural tone is the readiness to respond. So the readiness to respond is the relationship to the earth having a relationship, and to the heavens. Excuse me. So you're lying there on whatever surface you chose, and you could just let go and just, in a way, give up. Hopefully not in life, but in the moment. And sometimes we need to give up. We've just carried too much. We just, hopefully in a safe place, to just, so at least we let go of the overactivity of the doing. And then there's a luxuriating, that the earth supports us. We are people of the earth. We say Mother Earth, Father Heaven. At least I learned that. Maybe you have another way. Whatever way you have. That you open to receive gravity. Now, gravity, actually, we think of it as going down, but it goes down. Yes, it does go down, and things fall. But things also rise. They go toward heaven, air balloon. But for now, the underside goes into gravity. We can actually let go, not give up. There's a big difference between feeling the condensing of the cells coming together. Like if you want to lift something, you come underneath it. You're stronger than if you try to lift it from above. You gather, the cells naturally do it. This gathering, it's not, the gathering underneath. And just however you are, that the undersurface gathers. But you don't gather. It's not a motor act. It's a natural response. And that might take practice, or you might get it just like that. It's there to get like that, but sometimes we have a lot to go through to let go to find out what's actually present by just being an earth person. And meanwhile, the top surface is expanding into heaven, to the heavens, to the universe, to the cosmos. We the moon rises and lowers the tide somehow. Well, we're fluid. We're supposedly mainly fluid. And that's the whole thing about aging is, what's the word, dehydrating, and how do we stay moist, and the baby like a baby, and how to, longevity, the fountain of youth is in us. It's the liquidity of our inner sea, and not squeezing it out, but living in it. And so feeling it's not an eccentric contracting, it's an expanding on the top side and a condensing on the lower side. And I'll be quiet for a few minutes, a few seconds anyway, and give you a chance to just feel that. And now, if you will, if you want, roll to another surface. It might be the opposite, like if you're on your back, you'll be on your belly, or if you're on your side, you go to the other side, or you just go to the next space, from your back to the side, or your belly to the side. Whatever you feel like doing, roll to another side. And then repeat. You may or may not want to collapse. Sometimes I find that's helpful to let go of all the activity that I'm engaged in inside that's not my basic readiness to respond, but I'm already responding. So you might want to feel the difference between giving up and being passive in consciousness, and then awakening to the relationship that you have with the earth, and the earth has with you. And the more of us who can wake up to that, perhaps will actually take more care of the earth. I feel she knows. I use she. Maybe that you would prefer I used it or there. I'm not sure. The earth's not about a pronoun. The earth is the earth. Someone said, well, just call me then by my name, so I'll just say the earth. Feel the earth. Feel the earth gathering of you into its core, its heart of the earth. Another word for gathering is to yield. That's the difference between collapse and yield, is that there's this collecting, this gathering, this embrace toward the earth and the openness toward heaven. And we actually become a bridge between earth and heaven, the children of both. And then gradually rolling to another surface. And I think I've said all that perhaps to say for this somatization, so that you continue on your own. In the beginning, I am a guide, not a teacher, but a guide from my experience for you to discover yours. And as you are exploring this third side, if you even moved from your first side, take as long as you want, and ultimately, this is your journey. That one of the wonderful things about reflexes is they need to be stimulated into existence. They're only potential, but they are potential. They're innate patterns, but they need to be stimulated, to different ones stimulated in different ways, into existence. But once they're stimulated into existence, the response no longer needs the stimulus. It's independent. And the stimulus can occur without the response. There's an independence of the stimulus and response, but they need to come together to be brought into existence. Then the other thing that I found is that for every reflex, there's an opposite and equal reflex, which balances it, modulates it. So if you do your ballet, if you're a yoga practitioner, if you do a forward bending, do a backward bending of a similar curve. If you do right side bending, do the left side and the similar curve. And another somatization, maybe that would be a nice one to go over. If you do a twist one side, twist to the other. So as you're exploring this rolling, do all four sides. It will be, as a guide in this, it will be helpful for you. What you do is your own choice. It's a great way to, before going to bed or waking up in the morning, to feel how all the gravity has moved and stimulated all cells of your body through their relationship to gravity. Please continue and enjoy. Thank you. Embodying cellular consciousness through pathways of tonal flow. The dance and interweaving of the pathways of tonal flow establish the foundation for our movement and create the bridge between earth and heaven, and between our inner sense of self and our outer relationship with others and with the world in which we live. Father, condensing and yielding through the back body toward the earth, and expanding and opening through the front body toward the baby and the heavens. Baby condensing and yielding through the front body toward the Father and the earth, and expanding and opening through the back body toward the heavens.